in the virtual sphere. Ed, good morning.
Hello, Andy.
How are you?
Very well, very well. Just trying to find a quiet space in this mad world, but hopefully you can hear me well.
Yeah, that sounds pretty quiet. Do you want to go introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Ed Stonestreet, Vice President for EMEA for Elastic Path, focused on the kind of composable headless commerce that's revolutionizing our world.
There you go. Brian.
Hey, Andy, this is Brian Hennessy. I'm CEO of Telcoo, and Telcoo helps brands tell or create deeper connections with customers on every page by telling deeper product stories.
Excellent. Bobby?
Good morning. I'm Bobby Tulis. I'm Group Marketing Director for Global Freight Solutions, GFS, as you can see in the up there. You may or may not have heard of us. If you haven't, then GFS are the industry's largest provider of multi-carrier services and technology for e-commerce.
Excellent. So we've got a good range of insight there, I think, to come. So Ed, let me. So the title of this panel then is how you achieve sort of omni-channel excellence. So I just want to chuck that question out there. Basically, what do you think they need to do?
I think we've talked about omni-channel for years and years and years, and it's the exception, not the rule, that's actually done it, which points to one thing: it's bloody hard. You know, this is not just a one and done change in the technology. This is an ongoing iterative process. For me, the fundamental thing that underpins it is to meet the customer in the channel of their choice, whether that's in the bookstore, whether it's through a web app, whether it's through a website, call center, through Alexa. These are all channels now that are starting to evolve and develop. But the fundamental question remains, unless you've got the back-end architecture to do it, then it's really, really difficult. Yeah. But it should be driven by that vision of meeting the customer in the channel of their choice and focusing on how you deliver your brand value into that channel for that customer.
I think I'd agree with what Ed just said, omni-channel excellence, but I think the biggest question is biggest question mark is really hanging over, where does the high street store, where does the physical store fit into that now? What's the place of the store? I mean, you mentioned all those channels and the majority are digital, online.
I think the store is a digital channel as well.
But we're talking about the physical stores, and what is it, where does that fit into your strategy, your mix of channels, and how do you make that still a commercially viable proposition?
Yeah, I think we have to start thinking about the store as another digital channel and really focusing on empowering your employees to deliver experiences. And to do that, the PIM, for example, needs to be serving up content to the bookseller who's physically standing with a customer. And the POS has to be linked to the inventory, so that store can also become a delivery hub, because the store doesn't sit aside as a separate channel because it's physical. It's still wrapped into that digital world.
Yeah.
We actually have a customer where when you bring an item into the changing room, it brings up the description and tells you about the product that you're about to try on. So it is kind of the gold standard is merging your online and offline channels so that they're experiencing the same brand no matter where they go. And I think that's one of the keys is to start thinking of your channels not only as distribution channels, but as media channels. You have, especially for Black Friday, you're going to have thousands upon thousands of people streaming through your e-commerce site and through your physical stores. They might not buy, but if you think of it as a media channel, you have thousands of opportunities to communicate your values, communicate what you believe in to people who may not buy now, but they're going to come back. And this is where you can use Black Friday and the holiday season to start to communicate to new audiences and kind of gain market share.
I think it's everything that you both said makes sense, but I also think that peak shopping is a very different dynamic during the year. And I think, research from IMRG, looking at consumer behaviors, what they're looking for is that bargain, right? So they are looking for, where can I get the best price for this product? Yes, I think there's going to be concerns about product availability this year, because we know they've experienced that throughout the last 18 months, product availability, and there's been a lot of debate about do you start early with campaigns this year? Do you stock your stores to get people into stores? So I think peak is a different dynamic in that the behavior is different. Consumers they're looking for their bargain. So I don't think that the store they're not going to be looking, I don't think they're going to be looking as much for a brand experience as, say, the rest of the year or outside of that,
Let me put this out there then, because we're sort of talking about a stock problem here, right? So omni-channel, I guess you can define it in lots of different ways, but is this year the year where maybe really understanding how much you've got is quite important, right? So you imagine you're running a bunch of campaigns, so you might have a social campaign, you might be selling on some marketplaces, you've got your site, you've got the store and everything, and then someone, you're making these big promises about, come and get it, big discounts, but then you actually run out of stock because you've sold all that stuff. Being able to ensure that is very quickly replicated across everything is kind of an important thing.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the biggest areas of investment I've seen over the past 18 months has been in genuinely distributed order management technology or software that allows real-time visibility of inventory wherever it sits, even sitting in marketplaces, certainly sitting in stores, sitting in warehouses, because if you haven't got that real-time visibility, then it impacts the way that you run campaigns, it impacts the way you execute in store and online. And yeah, so that I've seen that as a major area of investment, driven by that urgent need to know where inventory is at any given point.
Before then, I think one thing that everybody is, a lot retail has learned through COVID is that you need to have a resilient supply chain, and where you are sourcing your products for. When China shut down over COVID, the factory of the world shut down. That caused a massive disruption in the supply chain. And I think since then, we've seen a lot of retailers trying to diversify their supply chain, trying to source products from other parts of the world so that they do have a reliable source of product, as well as being able to then distribute that efficiently and sell it efficiently once they've got it. But I think there's been a lot of focus right at the top end around sourcing product.
So we've had a hell of a 18 months, haven't we? And it could be that something like the pandemic, but also the kind of change in international trade relations, shall we say, brought about by Brexit. Also, there's quite a lot of bad blood between various nations at the minute that's impacting things like that. So what you're saying is having all your eggs in one basket has been kind of shown up rather badly by the last 18 months.
I don't think we can't really beat up retailers for that, because who could have ever predicted that this was going to happen? But I think they've been great in very quickly realizing that they need to focus on having a resilient supply chain and diversifying their supply.
Another important factor is, I like to think of retail as either being relationship-based retail or transactional. And there are brands who do a great job, brands in my life that I love to buy from because I believe in them. And a lot of consumers, I think the statistic now is that 61% of consumers do belief-based buying. They need a jacket, but they buy the particular jacket they want based on beliefs that they share with, say, a retailer or a manufacturer. And when you develop a relationship with customers, they understand supply chain issues. You can start, especially with Black Friday, start communicating with them early. And I'm okay with knowing that whatever's not in stock because I have a relationship with this brand or with this retailer. Whereas if it's purely transactional, I'm just on to the next retailer because I don't get the discount I want and it's not in stock. So I forget you, I'm going to go on to the next retailer until I find my jacket. Whereas if I have a relationship and they've been communicating with me early on, even starting now, I'm okay to wait for that jacket. I'll actually even buy early because I want to buy it from this retailer. So there is a shift, kind of a global shift from transactional retail to relationship-based retail. And I think that's kind of the overarching thing. And you know, supply chain or logistics is part of that relationship. You know, having a great click and collect and all that stuff, buy, like you were saying, buy where the consumer wants to be. That's all important.
So the availability of information then, I suppose, in the right areas is what kind of enables that, isn't it? So it's the same old kind of thing, isn't it? I mean, you could have talked about this 10 years ago, really. You know, we knew what we had to do. You've got all these systems, and ultimately systems are kind of built up in isolation from each other. It's just the nature of it, and then they can't communicate. And then some stuff's a bit older than others, and you know, for difficult technical reasons, they literally can't communicate. But that's ever the case, though, isn't it? I don't think you're ever really going to get over that. That's just the nature of the beast.
Well,
isn't it,
I mean, there's a lot of effort, R&D, and you know, focus on trying to get away from that, and that's why we've seen the rise in kind of this MACH principle. So the microservices API cloud headless principle that underpins the architectural basis. And that's why, certainly from an elastic path point of view, we're thinking really about composable commerce, which is actually having individual elements, but ensuring that they work together seamlessly. So if you change out one bit, it doesn't, you know, pull your whole stack down. So will we ever, so the solution that kind of Salesforce and others came up with was to address that problem, Andy, by saying, yep, that's the problem. So have it all in one place and we'll manage it end to end, which is a way of solving it. But actually then becomes difficult for the inverse reason, which is you've got it all in one place and you can't manipulate it the way you want to. So where MACH is coming from is actually disaggregating that and saying, which pieces do you need, Mr. Customer, to drive forward this outcome? And starting from that kind of, everyone's bored to death at the Lego analogy, but that is the analogy, and building it up in the way that suits you. But having a vision to start with about meeting the customer in the channel of their choice, and then building towards that. And you can start to do that without wholesale change of your back end. So it used to be that this was a lift and shift, boil the ocean, changing the cardiovascular heart of your business. And now we're saying, no, actually, we can come at this in a piecemeal approach. As long as we know what the vision is, you don't have to boil the ocean. You can solve for this now, knowing that you solve for that later, and you've become programmatic about it. I think, is it the ultimate solution? I don't know. But are we thinking about exactly that problem and how not to land ourselves back in this situation in 5 years' time? Absolutely, we are.
I think I think that's one aspect of you know, organizations having to deal with legacy systems, disparate systems, data sitting in different pots, and how do you bring that all together so that the person facing the customer on the shop floor actually gets a single view of that customer and is able to provide it, you know, really engage with that customer. That's one thing. And I think that's a real common challenge, you know, IT challenge. But I think what Brian was talking about was also customer communication and managing expectations. Andy, remember we did because we focus on delivery. And one thing that, you know, one thing is when they buy the product, but another thing is when they're, you know, when they expect to receive it, and how vital it is to manage communication, you know, to have constant communications, manage expectations. And one thing that we said was that the failed delivery is not when the parcel doesn't turn up as far as the customer is concerned. The failed delivery is if you haven't told them or prepared them to know that that parcel is going to be late, or it's been delivered to the neighbor, or whatever. So I think there is something around communication and managing customer expectations.
Well, that's to the relationship point, I think, that Brian was talking about, isn't it? You know, it's if it does turn out late, but you've told me that it's going to be there, then my expectation is fine. I'm probably a bit less annoyed about the fact that you've done that. But I think the worst experience that I had with this, right, was a few years ago. But I went into a shop and I said, I'm trying to buy this thing. And they said, oh, we haven't got it here. And I said, have you got it online? Could I order it? She said, I don't know how to do that. You know, and then I had to go and look on the website, and I found it. And I just thought, well, you know, have you not got a mobile phone? But they were unable to sort of put those pieces together, you know, and it's just so ludicrous the way that they, and that from sort of relationship perspective was just like, look, no, mate, you know, no, thanks. Can't help you. And that was kind of the end of that.
Yes, and that's to Ed's point. Those you know, composable commerce. There's a app out there. I think it's available in the UK. It's locally, and you can find your product anywhere. So if you want to my jacket that I keep talking about. You go online, it's not available. It'll tell you where it's available around you. It'll tell you just kind of basically, it does that kind of, it's available, that product is available and you can get it wherever you want. And so this is I had this same experience with, one retailer here whose home goods just remodeled my house, and they were amazing. You could get the sink delivered to your house. You could go pick it up at store. You could go into the store, find the sink, order it online once you're there. I mean, they're amazing about it. And, honestly, it was a store that I didn't actually have a relationship before. It's a big box retailer that I didn't like to shop at. But now I have that gave me the relationship. I was like, oh my gosh, you are really looking out for me. And so now I go check there every time when I need to buy some sort of home good. That's the first place I go because I know that they take care of it.
And talk about it at conferences to a room full of people.
Yeah.
About how good that. Can we just talk about the store for the last kind of few minutes of this? I mean, so we've sort of talked about getting the stock in the right place and the information around it and stuff like that. But I'm just interested in the sort of changing role of the store, if that is a thing, right? So you've got sort of, slightly lower footfall, I think, than we've been used to. So what does that mean? I mean, are these like sort of fulfillment things now? Do they have a merged role like that? Anyone have a view?
I think it's open to debate. I think that there's lots of viewpoints out there. We've learned from COVID that you don't have to have well-stocked big box stores anymore. We saw once the high street opened, people going back to the high street because they were pulled in by big discounts and whatever else. But then once those discounts were over, the footfall dropped back down again. There's a lot of debate. It's part of an ongoing trend of the decline or the reinvention of the high street, and COVID has just accelerated that.
Yeah, I think the question actually goes to the retailer. What do you want your store to be?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, Kieran wants something different from his booksellers and the experience that he's looking to deliver there. Perhaps, yes, and maybe it is a distribution hub as well, but that's in the back end. And that's very different to what JD Sports wants in terms of their stores. So there's no one size answer for that. But I think the only fundamental that I'd talk to is that you have to be able to deliver the same brand experience in the store as you do across your other channels, and you need to empower your employees to deliver those experiences. And that means giving them the information they need and ensuring that they can execute on that. To Brian's point a moment ago, walking into the home goods store and them knowing who you are, knowing what your order was, understanding that you're here to pick it up, just make it easy. And that's irrespective of retail vertical.
I think with all this technology, we tend to get lost in the technology and are looking for thinking of technology as providing new solutions and some, crazy new thing. But what we all really want is that experience from the high street, the little boutique that we love. We walked in there, they knew who we were, they knew what we loved. You knew that they had the products that you love. And you had someone there who was like, oh, Brian, look, I found some stuff for you. This is going to be great. You're going to love this. Go ahead. I'll wrap it up for you. It's that personal experience, is trying to replicate that across a whole bunch of channels, across, thousands of miles. But the goal is still the same. It's trying to create that personal experience where people know you and you know them and you believe in them, creating that relationship.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for participating in this.